So I didn't really have any sort of agenda or anything. So I thought maybe we would just, like always, wing it. But I thought maybe a logical first place to start would be the opening scene. You know, Scream, all 5 of them are known for their epic opening scenes.
Yes.
And then maybe just kind of work our way towards the killer reveal, so we can talk about the kills, the characters, and all of that throughout. But one thing I did want to start with before that is, I've been a fan of the series since the first movie came out. I just absolutely loved it. Have loved it over the years more and more. It's one of those movies that keeps growing on you. But a lot of my close buddies, they never really cared about it that much. And it wasn't until you and I were at work and I was walking by one day, we were talking movies like we always do, and you said, hey, what do you think of Scream? And you said it in a way that it could go either way. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to say how I feel. And I just said, I absolutely love Scream. And you're like, me too. And I was like, whoa, like someone in real life also loves Scream. And of course my wife loves Scream, but that's the result of being married to me. I kind of, right. She's kind of
you pass your shit on to the people who are closest to you.
Right, exactly. So I thought that was a good way to begin talking about this, and I'm able to kind of give my first thoughts on this new installment to a series that is going to obviously keep going at this point with the success. They
just announced the other day, 6 is going to film this summer.
Yep. So there's no stopping this. So
no.
I have to come to terms with the fact that there's going to be more Scream movies, like it or love it. So.
Well, what's funny is I don't remember that particular conversation, and I know that I hadn't watched any of these in forever until my friend and I rewatched all 4 at the time last Halloween. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing you brought up, though, is you said you've been a fan since the original. So did you see the original in theaters?
No, I saw the original. My mom was cool enough to rent it for me at Hollywood Video. One of my buddies said that I guess his sister rented it and he wanted to watch it with me. So he saw it a second time and I saw it for the first time. I saw the second one in theaters, and that was back when it was easy to buy a ticket for one movie and sneak into another. So I don't remember what movie we bought, but we snuck our way into Scream 2. It was packed.
You saw Scream 2 after having already rented Scream 1.
Yes, I saw them all in order. Saw each predecessor a million times before seeing the new one. So I was very familiar with each new installment when I was going in.
See, I had a bit of a backwards situation of that. I saw 2 in theaters before having seen 1, and then I got to rent the first one because basically, I was already, when I was a little kid, I would like the TNT edits is what I'd basically see, but I'd seen all your Jason and Freddy and all that type of stuff that they'd kind of cleaned up for basic cable. But I remember vaguely when the first one came out. I have no idea why I didn't see it at the time because my grandma had no problem taking me to see whatever the hell I wanted to see, basically. I remember even getting her to take me to see a Hellraiser movie that was in theaters when I was, probably like a year or so before Scream came out. That was an experience. I remember I talked her into taking me to see Scream 2. Saw it multiple times in theaters that I can distinctly recall. And then renting the first one right after seeing the second one. Maybe I'd already seen it a couple times. At the time, I was probably too young to fully get how smart those movies were. Mm-hmm. Clearly, having already watched a bunch of movies that they were making fun of, I was understanding a lot of it. And it's really funny, too, how, at the time, it really felt like somebody like a Jamie Kennedy was going to be like the it comedian guy in movies. And he's very funny in those movies. But then you look at it being like, man, and then by the time Scream 3 would come out, it's like that guy's career is like dead.
No, you're thinking of Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard, yes, sorry.
No, I don't. I think Jamie Kennedy's career had evolved from Scream through the third movie, and then he got his TV show, the Jamie Kennedy Experience, Experiment, which I thought was hilarious. And I think it displays his talent for playing several different characters, disguising himself in several different characters. Like, I mean, maybe he's not at the height of Robin Williams, but he definitely has that type of talent that not every person has. And he can improv like a motherfucker, and same with Skeet Ulrich. It's like he kind of disappeared for a while. He was, he had that small part in As Good as It Gets, and he's only in like maybe 20 minutes.
I totally forgot he was in that movie. When you rewatch like the first Scream movie, him and Lillard are delivering like crazy in that finale. The casting at the time, it's a weird time capsule because you look back at it and you go like, man, there was a lot of like it people in this who really didn't pan out, as far as having like big successful careers. But at the time you would have thought like, oh yeah, they're all going to be giants. My two favorites when I went back to rewatch him as far as like weird casting choices, Timothy Olyphant is one of my favorite people to watch in anything right now. Justified's like one of the best shows the last, 10 years or whatever.
Did you watch Deadwood?
I started Deadwood back when Netflix had the discs to order.
Oh yeah.
And I got through like the first half of like the first season and I was enjoying it. It was just one of those things like I stopped and then like once I stopped I never went back, and I should watch it now that it's right there to watch on your phone on HBO Max. Like I can start watching it as we're talking. Even his tiny little part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was like one of those actors where like when I saw his name in the credits, before we even saw like a trailer being like, oh, Timothy Olyphant's in this, like, holy shit, that's going to be amazing.
I remember thinking, oh, good, he's in this.
And then, of course, the craziest one, Billy's mom, played by Aunt Jackie from Roseanne.
Yes, Laurie Metcalf.
Tremendous.
Terrific.
Movie.
She was terrific.
Her. And it was so weird because it was so distinctly different. I remember sitting there in the theater and going like, oh, that's Aunt Jackie from Roseanne, right? But like, she was so crazy at the end. I'm going like, is that Aunt Jackie? Like, or is this just somebody who looks a lot like her? And from what I understand, she's like a really classically trained thespian, like stage type actor. It just happened to be she got success on a sitcom. So yeah, I love her. Like that's one of my favorite parts of those entire movies is the reveal at the end with her and Oliphant, because they're both just so good.
I remember the crowded theater, and there were a couple of instances that I remember from that showing in Scream 2 where everyone was just packed in, probably because some people were sneaking in like I was.
Yeah, exactly. How are there 300 people in this 250 seat auditorium?
Right. Or we only sold 100 tickets. How are there 250 people here? But I remember when it was revealed she was the killer, like people like gasped. People were like whispering, Jackie did it. And, so I like everyone associated her with Aunt Jackie. And this was just a complete 180. And it was just, I'll always remember that every time I watch Scream 2. I've watched Scream 2 countless times, and I always am brought back when she's revealed as the killer to that. And quite honestly, I think is one of the most fascinating motives in the entire film series thus far.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
It is. It's probably the one that is foreshadowed excellently and makes the most sense out of everyone, not to take away from Scream 1's motives. I think that was really, really good too. And I loved how everything lined up. But I think it was the fact that they foreshadowed this in Scream 1, who the killer in Scream 2 would be, that just delivers that extra shock when it's finally revealed. And they did a good job of Laurie Metcalf's character in particular of allowing the viewer to forget about her, because I kind of forgot about her. Whereas the problem I had with Timothy Olyphant and Matthew Lillard was that they disappeared, and I noticed their lack of presence, and I became immediately
never in any key scenes.
Yes, they're never around when Ghostface is. Now, neither is Laurie Metcalf's character, but they did a good job of making exactly. Whereas, the first Scream, they did an excellent job of Billy being in the presence of Ghostface, so I immediately assumed it's not him, let alone he's the prime suspect. So I was like, oh, he's not going to be. So
it can't be this very obvious thing that everybody thinks.
Yeah, and Ghostface is stabbing him, so how could he be the guy? So that was Scream 1 and Scream 2 are exceptionally clever. And I thought that Scream 3's bait and switch, had that not been the planned last installment, I feel like that would have been a decent movie, but I feel like it kind of went out with a whimper, considering that it was a planned trilogy at the time. But I felt like Scott Foley's reveal, because supposedly he died, but he really just faked his own death and started slaughtering everyone, which is an Agatha Christie reference, I would say.
Yeah.
I thought that worked, but it was a bit underwhelming for the final installment. It did not feel like they were going out with a bang, but more of a whimper. But I thought that the one killer reveal was clever in the sense that the killings are taking place in this gigantic mansion and Ghostface is just appearing out of nowhere. So it has to be two people, but it's not only revealed that it's one killer, but it's also that there are secret passages through the house that it does make sense that one person could pull this off.
Well, I'm sure you're fully aware of the idea of, when Kevin Williamson sold the script for the first one, he also was like, here's an outline for where I want 2 and 3 to go if this is a hit. Mm-hmm. And then, 1 was such a big hit and they, basically like, we're going to film this tomorrow and have it out, in like 10 months or something. Once that happened, it's like you don't really have much of a choice but to be like, yes, let's stick to the plan here. And then, of course, with 3, they had a completely different plan, but he was so busy with, like Dawson's Creek and like a bunch of others, like was The Faculty he wrote. And then
I think it was a TV series called Wasteland, which included Rebecca Gayheart, who was in Scream 2. So yeah, he had a lot of projects going on. So it basically came down to either no Nev Campbell or no Kevin Williamson. And I think one of the things that
the third option, which Bob Weinstein wasn't going to allow, was give me a year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
let's not make it so quickly. If we time this out, I can fit it in my schedule. But of course, Bob Weinstein knew better, and we ended up with Scream 3.
Well, in all fairness, there's a couple of risks waiting too long.
Oh, of course.
One, that interest could be gone by the time they get around to it. But 2, Wes Craven, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Liev Schreiber, all of them have schedules as well. So, they had 4 of and Roger L. Jackson. So, they had 5 out of the 7 people they absolutely felt they needed. So, they only got one or the other, Nev Campbell or Kevin Williamson, or they could wait until all 7 schedules align, which could be never. Or when they finally do align, the Scream is no longer profitable. I get why, Scream 3's quality is subpar, but, I'm very sympathetic towards the hand that movie in and of itself was dealt.
I can appreciate as well the idea that they kind of look and go like, even though you had all the pieces together, you did go like, hey, we kind of rushed 2 out, and that worked out critically and financially really well for us.
It did.
So why the hell couldn't we keep kind of striking while the iron's hot with this and just kind of keep going? But you hear what Williams' original plan was, which was that, Stu wasn't actually dead and he was going to have been sort of like the Blofeld and Spectre, I'm the author of all your pain type situation, which possibly could have maybe ruined some of that as well, because you would have thought they would have brought up that like, oh yeah, no, Stu's in prison, he's not dead.
1, I don't think that would have worked, which is why they never did it. But 2, I don't think that was ever Williamson's plan. I'm not sure how valid that. I think it's a rumor.
Now, of course, he could be, shining us on, but Matthew Lillard himself in something, and once again, this could just be I'm trying to, get my name out there and, work myself into a future sequel, had said that he even had like a pay or play deal based on coming back for 3. When they went the different direction, he still got actually paid for that movie. They also could have had an idea though of like how
Jamie Kinney comes back in 3, how Skeet Ulrich comes back in 5. There's a variety of different things. But no, it's my understanding that Williamson's original plan for Scream 2 was to have everyone die, with the exception of possibly Sidney and Cotton Weary, their fates being ambiguous a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when that did not happen, then the idea for Scream 3 was going to be a return to Woodsboro, in which there's a new group of teens who are, staging, very inspired by Stab. So you get these remnants, especially in Scream 4, basically Kevin Williamson's version of Scream 3. But the reveal at the end is that it's all fake. All they wanted to do was and I'm not sure how that would the logistics of that actually would work. But Williamson did have.
It's interesting though.
Yeah. So I don't know if I believe the whole Stu was not dead was ever an actual, serious plan.
I definitely feel that if that were the case, that there would have been even like a background shot of a newspaper in, number 2 being like, the trial of, one of the Woodsboro killers or something, where it's like, some little breadcrumb trail, pointing back to like where 3 could possibly go. So I do agree with you on that. Of like, I feel they would have teased it in some way, as opposed to being like, no, they're just dead. Especially because if he was in jail, even then, I think you'd go like, let's go talk to this guy to make sure he doesn't know what's going on with this new situation. Because there could have been 3 of them.
Exactly. It's like, if he had lived all along, why not engage him in Scream 2 to say, hey, there's copycat murderers. You probably know that Billy's mom's up to something, so there's no way to make it, make a lot of sense. And, Stu was probably the most popular character at the time. Scream 1 and Scream 2 is
such a fun
and I'd say
Dad are gonna be so mad at me.
Just the fact that a lot of those money lines were ad-libbed as well just adds to the
fantastic.
The second most popular character, I would say, was Randy, and there was it upset a lot of people that Randy died in Scream 2, but the sequel wasn't playing it safe. There was respect that they took the risk and killed him off. But
I remember that being shocking. By the way.
I gasped some swear words in the theater, and my friend's like, Kaylin, chill out. So, I don't know why. I for some reason, I just had it in my head. He was not going to die. Yeah.
I felt that in mind, like 2 was the first one I'd seen.
Yeah.
But because I don't even know what I would have seen him in before that, but maybe I just seen him on like TV shows or something, like, on Conan or something. Right. But to me, in my brain, I was thinking like, he's like, and I wasn't watching Friends, but I knew like who Courtney Cox was, obviously. It's like Party of Five, but like, to me, like, he was the star, and as you're watching that movie, he's the one that's really popping as the, charismatic character. So I'm going like, holy shit, they just cut. In my brain, having not seen 1 yet, I'm going like, you killed off like the main reason I came to this.
And they did it in the middle of the movie in broad daylight as well. I mean, it was crazy. They did set it up for us to assume he was in the safe zone. And they also kind of like teased us that he was going to survive as well. Because, if you look at the film class scene at the very beginning, he says, I let the geek get the girl. And it's like, okay, well, he survived film number 1 and he's saying this. So he's probably going to be the leading man by the end of this. And the geek saves the day. And just out of nowhere, like in broad daylight, they kill him off. And I kind of, again, that's one of those things where, I can watch Scream 2 a million times, but I go back to, I still vividly remember the first time I saw, and I just did not see that coming. So, so we can cover 4. I did mention it briefly that I in a lot of ways feel like, it's Williamson's version of Scream 3, but at the same time, I like it a lot. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's a very self-contained movie, which is kind of fun, but overall, it's of no consequence to the series. I feel like Scream 3 has a little more impact on the franchise. We finally find out why and how this all started. Some of that may have been made up during the scripting of Scream 3, but they did a great job of not retconning anything. You can still go back to Scream 1 and nothing's affected by these new revelations created in Scream 3, if you will. Yeah. But Scream 4, really, it's just, they don't really reference anything in Scream 5 about Scream 4 or anything like that.
With the exception of Judy. Yeah, and like, I really liked 4. I remember seeing it in theaters when it came out, and it felt very much sort of like, I got nothing better to do today. Like, it definitely wasn't we're going to the Thursday at, I think then they were still doing midnight, but like, it definitely was, it was more of like I went at like on a Sunday at like 2:00 in the afternoon or something. It wasn't like I'm going to rush out and see the first possible showing of this. But I remember sitting there and going like, I'm enjoying this. This is fun. And I think at that point, maybe I'd kind of written off the franchise due to 3. I haven't been like, okay, well, this is dead. Like, you had a couple movies that I enjoyed as a kid, and like, I don't really think about it that much anymore. But 4, I would probably go so far as to say 3 as well, of going like, you could kind of just go into 5, having just watched 1 and 2 again, and just sort of like the idea I've heard people say of, well, Rocky Balboa actually really works as a movie if you just watch Rocky before it and skip out, 2 through 4 or 3 through 5. And it's like, I could see how that, could possibly work as just like the beginning and the end of, this guy's career.
Yeah, I always skip Rocky 5, by the way. Well, so yeah, I can understand why you said 2 through 4, because I never watch Rocky 5.
Exactly.
I do love 2, 3, and 4 that I watch them anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, no, I completely understand. You can jump from Rocky 1 to Rocky Balboa or Rocky 6, if you will.
Exactly. And even now you could probably do, Rocky just to Creed.
But you are punished if you try to get to Creed 2 and you do not see Rocky 4.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, you do.
Creed 2 is a sequel to Rocky 4. Yeah,
right. So you do find yourself in a knot if you do skip around too much in that series.
Exactly. But yeah, back to kind of putting the nail on 4. I remember rewatching with a friend and going like, I didn't remember dick about 3 with the exception of Jay and Silent Bob and Carrie Fisher. Like that's all I remembered. I didn't know who the killer was. I knew it wasn't Gail or Dewey or something, but like, so like, what the fuck? Yeah, like I've seen this and I don't remember anything about it. 4, when I rewatched it, because it's a little more recent than 3 had been, obviously, because I hadn't seen 3 since theaters, but I love Emma Roberts at the end of that movie.
Oh no, that's another excellent killer reveal. I think
it is amazing.
I think Rory Culkin's killer reveal as well is pretty
good. Yeah, he was
it's underrated. Good. I think he gets a lot of. I mean, I'm not hearing people tear him to shreds, but I think
it's kind of forgettable in the sense of how good everybody else is, but he's not a bad one.
No, Scream 4 had an excellent killer reveal. And again, I did not see that coming, and I'm one of those guys that, my wife's like, Caitlin, don't talk during the movie because you're just going to figure,
yeah, exactly.
You're just going to figure out how it ends. But for some reason, these Scream movies, they always shock me, except for Scream 5. We'll get to that though.
I texted a friend my theory as I was watching it.
Yeah.
That turned out to be correct, but we'll get to that as it plays out. Casting, I'll just say, was what gave something away for me. But
are you talking about the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood casting?
Exactly.
God, tell me about it, dude. And you know what? Another trend I noticed. We'll talk about Rory Culkin and Emma Roberts is another Hollywood baby, which is a Quaid.
Yes.
So they give these people who are from movie star families. They let them be the killers in this. And I also feel like he overplayed the puppy dog card a little bit. At the beginning, I was kind of convinced that, he was in, was it Modesto is where they were supposedly at? And also the fact that he knew nothing about Stab, that got me for a little while. But as the movie progressed, I was like, the 2 most obvious killers ended up being the killers.
There's a part of that I think is one of my favorite moments in the entire franchise, though. And we'll get into it as we get a little deeper, because you wanted to start off with the opening scene where we don't know this at first, but the victim is not actually killed.
I feel like I knew that. The trailers did not give it away, but there was just something. Well, okay. In all fairness to Scream 5, and I'm going to call it Scream 5 instead of Scream 2022.
It's easier.
And I just don't agree with that title.
And not just with this. That goes for Halloween. It goes for
exactly
any of those things.
To give the movie, the opening scene specifically, its due credit is that it was forced to try and do something that the other movies didn't. But there's very few options left at this point, and the only 2 options I see available are to not have an opening scene at all, or to have an opening scene but there be no deaths. I feel like that was the only thing they could have done, and if they did anything differently, it would have just been some sort of rehash of one of the opening scenes of the first 4 movies. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't really emotionally affected, but I sympathize with the writers for being stuck in a way. But what I also love, and this is what I loved about Scream 4, is that the Ghostface dialogue in both of those opening scenes are exceptional. The one concern I have with Scream 4 and Scream 5 in regards to that is that I feel like the writers, they kind of stopped with trying so hard with the Ghostface dialogue in the remainder of the movie. I feel like some of Ghostface's best lines in those 2 movies alone are at the very, very beginning, and then everything else kind of just drops off after that.
The only part of the Ghostface stuff that I recall after the opening, which actually was really kind of funny, was to skip basically towards the ending when Sidney was just like, "Yeah, I'm not having this conversation," and he's like, "Wait, hold on."
Right.
I thought that was actually pretty great. Of like, they had their like, "No, I want to have this moment with Luke Skywalker of this franchise," and they just shut me down. between that and like, oh, well, I kind of like the part when Judy's racing home and he's all like, oh no, I'll have killed 3 people by then because I'm about to kill your son. Like that I thought was fun, but it's definitely nothing where I was like, oh, that's such a great quote. I remember liking that little bit of like, oh, you say you killed 3 people, you've only killed 2. It's like, well, give me 5 minutes.
So speaking of Judy's death, that was in a lot of ways a great death scene. And in other ways, I like that it was basically a double kill. It was Judy and then her son. It was a sad scene, but I thought it was well done, but it's the Ghostface killing in broad daylight. And it's
didn't even yank her into a van like poor Randy. Right. Just like, no, we're doing this on the front lawn.
And I thought it was great because if you think about it, and again, it did go back to Randy a lot of ways, is that you kill the survivor in midday in the middle of the movie. But it's also, if you think about it, some of the most atrocious things that we can think of were done in broad daylight. 9/11, Columbine, seeing Ghostface just kind of out there, and that, it's not at night when, you're in danger. You can be in danger any time of the day and anyone can be in danger. There was something eerie about seeing Ghostface just step out and just take her down. But the one problem I did have with the scene is I thought the jump scares were good, but it went on too long.
The overabundance of the sun.
Yeah, I mean, the police took too damn long to get there. Even if it realistically would have taken them that long to get there, I don't feel like Ghostface would have taken.
Yeah, Ghostface didn't know that the cops weren't going to be there. Right. In 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, there's some unnecessary suspension of disbelief in this movie, which I think that everyone should go into any movie with an open mind and a willingness to suspend disbelief. But when the writers put themselves in an unnecessary corner, that's where I feel criticism is warranted. And I feel like, I cannot fully praise that particular scene because the way they just set up the scene for the need of some extra jump scares, it really just made it unrealistic.
It definitely took a little bit of time, and it definitely was like, I would speed up the process if I were the Ghostface in that situation.
Yep. Definitely. But I thought both Judy and her son, Wes, I thought those were actually great kills. It's not like I'm rooting for anyone to die. The series does a good job of humanizing these characters, unlike other horror franchises. But at the same time, I can appreciate the creativity and just the new ways they discover Ghostface to take down victims. So in terms of that, it was satisfactory, but it was just the realism that is oftentimes celebrated in Scream was lost in that particular scene.
Yeah, you could probably trim maybe 2 minutes off that, and it would have felt a lot more like, okay, definitely. this makes a bit more sense.
And it's all in Wes's death. I thought Judy's death was handled very well.
And the funny thing is, you could have done some pretty easy editing to be like, actually, that phone call took place like as her son is laying there bleeding out.
Oh yeah, this is something that could definitely be fixed with the fan recut.
Yeah. Where did you stand with finally killing off one of our core 3 characters?
Yeah, I think the key word is finally. Not that I loved the character in the first Scream. If I'm being completely honest, it's always been to me kind of a reality that he's, because he was supposed to die in the first Scream, and they added that scene at the end. So it's like, in some ways I felt like Dewey was kind of dead, but also I felt like they flanderized the character a lot in the sequels. And to me, as much as I love Dewey in the first movie and in the 5th one, actually, but in Screams 2, 3, and 4, he is absolutely useless. He is the most useless character.
He's very bumbling. And
he doesn't do anything to help anyone. He doesn't progress the story in any way. Maybe a little bit in Scream 3, but in Scream 2 and Scream 4, he is useless. In fact, in Scream 2, he's just shoehorned into the movie. There's really no realistic reason why he should be present at that time. If anything, he should get out of there, not only to create one less victim, but also one less suspect. I'm a fan of Dewey for Scream 1, and I'm also a fan of Dewey because David Arquette is he loves the fact that he's involved in Scream, and that's very rewarding.
He does very good with everything they give him. Yeah, even if the material itself is, and he's not somebody that I even think of outside of like these movies. Mm-hmm. And in the year 2000, when they made that WCW Ready to Rumble movie, and they actually made him the World Championship Wrestling heavyweight champion of the world. to promote said movie, and that company was out of business within 8 months. The reason I bring that up is there's a part in there where, because they have kids together, and I feel we should address this just from the overall series, where Courtney Cox is in the documentary, and I'm going like, oh, this is really cool, because she's talking really lovingly of even though they're divorced. I'm going like, oh, this is really cool. They get along, despite having no longer been married. The one thing that I really love about all 5 of those movies is the 2 of them have insane chemistry on screen.
Oh, it's heartbreaking that their marriage didn't work out, and I have my fingers crossed that they get back together. I usually don't give a shit about celebrity relationships, but they just feel so meant for each other.
Well, I remember like when my friend and I were rewatching these, we're doing like one a night for like 4 or 5 nights or whatever, maybe we took a night off, but like I'm watching the first one and I'm going like, oh, I can totally see how they hooked up after this. She's like, oh my God. She's like, that's all I'm thinking about watching this. And as we were watching 3, it's like, it's still there. And I'm texting my friend and I'm going like, they're still together at this point, right? And we're looking it up, and I think it was between 3 and 4 that they got divorced. And then we're going like, man, they're not going to have any chemistry in 4. It's going to be awkward as shit. And we're like, no, they still do. Like, and in this, it's like they still do. And I'm going like, because there's loads of movies I've seen where I know, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst were dating at some point while making the Spider-Man movies. You'd never know it watching those movies. Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman were dating at some point making those Star Wars prequels. You'd never know it. But yeah, the 2 of them are such a joy to watch in those movies. And I agree with you where typically I wouldn't really give a shit, but I'm going like, they're so likable in these movies. Like, work it out, you crazy kids. But yeah, like that's something I think we kind of skipped over as far as performances and all that it's a complete and total joy watching, like even when they're doing stuff in the worst movies or, boring moments, just watching the 2 of them and going like, I can't look away when you 2 are on screen together. It's tremendous chemistry. So
a couple of other things that I want to say about Dewey's death before we move on is, despite my criticism, like, the possibility was always there. It's always been there. But the reality of it didn't really hit me until, camera hovers over him and you see his dead eyes. And it's like, okay, there is no stretcher at the end for this one. And then to top that all off, they actually bring him out in a stretcher in a body bag. They captured the emotion really, really well. I felt like it was like legitimately depressing. But again, it was one of those things where the writers they put themselves in an unnecessary corner. Dewey is, as goofy as he is, I don't believe that the Dewey that Kevin Williamson wrote is that stupid to get back off the elevator and then approach Ghostface with the intention of shooting him or her in the head, only to get distracted by his phone ringing and then get stabbed. So it relies too much on Dewey being less goofy and more stupid, but also it relies on Ghostface waking up and attacking at the perfect time. It's just, things align too unrealistic. It's too contrived. And I feel like if they really wanted to kill Dewey off, they had the emotion there. And I think they could have just written it far more realistically. Doesn't Ghostface almost pretty much pick him up with that knife?
Yeah.
So we're talking about 120-pound, 5'2", 17-year-old.
It's a small girl who's lifting this 200-pound man.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's a bit extreme as far as what she's capable of doing. It's definitely a powerful move that, yeah, I can see that. But no, I definitely had the thing. But this to me goes for almost any horror movie, including some parts in the prior Scream films, where you watch it and you go like, all right, Dewey wants to go back and make sure the kill's confirmed, which, smart, obviously. But at the same time, you're sitting there kind of going like, all right, just shoot them from 10 feet away. Don't get so close, because he could have stood 10 feet away, shot her in the knees like a couple times. Even if she was just playing dead, she's going to wake right up. And if she's not, and if she's playing dead, she's not going to be able to like stand up and stab you. Yeah, don't get within stabbing distance and then get distracted by your phone. Get distracted by your phone when you're like 20 feet away.
Right. It's really not about the fact that Dewey died. It's an unnecessary corner that the writers wrote themselves in. And so it just speaks to the quality of that scene. And it's not like we're just talking about any random kill either. I mean, Dewey is a character that that's been around for 25 years. You want to handle this type of death with care. It's similar to how I think a lot of fans probably felt about Han Solo's death. Whereas, this is a character that's been around for, I think at that point, almost 40 years, maybe a little less at the time.
It was 38, 1977 to 2005, 2015.
But at the same time, yes, Harrison Ford is very open about him wanting Han Solo to have died at the end of Empire. But
he only wanted to do 2 of these.
Still, you want to handle that with care. This isn't just any random character that you're killing off in a TV show that's slated to be around for 7 to 10 years. This is a character that's been around for decades at this point.
That's one of the things I actually really kind of was surprised about the Dewey thing, quite frankly, was the fact that as I'm watching it, I wouldn't say that I started to tear up or anything like that, but I probably got as close to that type of reaction as you can get without getting there. And it really made me stop and go like, wow, I care more about this character than I thought I did. Yeah, as far as the having a moment being like, oh my God, I've been watching these movies, even though there's probably been a 10-year period where I haven't rewatched any of them, but going like, these have been in my life well more than half my life at this point, basically. And going, this really emotionally is like, I knew if you kill off Han Solo, it's going to, emotionally hit me. But going like, you killed off Dewey from Scream, and I'm going like, this is hitting me harder than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I had the opinion that to me, in some ways, Dewey was kind of dead in the first one. I never really liked Dewey outside of the first movie. But yeah, when it happened, I was like, oh, wow. I think it's in part that the filmmakers, they did capture just the mood that, they intended to. So they did a good job with that. But again, like they set it up to be so obvious as well. Like, I mean, again, the trailer kind of gave away like how much Dewey was going to be in the movie. I mean, he's seen a lot in the trailers, but it's like there's like 3 different settings that we see him in. Yeah. So it's like, okay.
All 3 of them are all over that trailer, to the point where like I was really surprised going like, I haven't, outside of that scene where he calls her, like I haven't seen Neve Campbell. We're like, almost 90 minutes into this fucking movie.
But, that's another thing that set me off though, is that the way that Sidney is talking to Dewey, it's like, okay, they're going to make Dewey's death an obvious thing. And then when Dewey and Gale finally see each other again, it's like, okay, Dewey's going to die.
He kind of said his goodbyes by admitting where he fucked up. And it's like, okay, he gets to die essentially he has the regret of, making the mistakes he made, but he doesn't have that regret of like, I wish I'd told her like it was my fault. But I also found myself sitting there still going, yeah, but these fucking characters, they survive all of these fucking movies. You know what I mean? So I kept thinking to myself, like, Han Solo was running through my head through a lot of that, because he was doing the whole, like, I'm going to shepherd these new characters through this world type thing. But there was still something in the back of my brain going like, unless one of them turns out to be the killer, none of them are going to die, just because they never do. So yeah, it was foreshadowed a bit, but I still had that little bit in the back of my brain being like, this ain't going to happen until, like you said, it was a very nice touch to be like, no, we're showing you the body bag and we're showing you Gale's reaction when she gets to show up. So like, there's no confusion of like, oh, that body bag is actually that security guard you saw, and Dewey's going to be rolled out here in a second. It's like, no, she showed up knowing that her ex-husband was already dead. All 3 of them did a very, very good job. And none of them seemed like they were phoning it in for a paycheck, which quite frankly, I mean, obviously Cox has that friend's money. She probably never needs to do a single thing for the next 200 years and she'll be fine.
Kudos to the writers who didn't really shoehorn them in. I felt like all 3 of their characters were included in this story very naturally.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and I'll be interested to see where 6 goes with Sidney and Gale as far as, do we keep them?
I could see it going either way, and I'd be fine with it going either way. It's just one of the things that I just want the series to be careful of is that I think the more you include them in movies, the more you feel compelled to, finally up that ante and kill them off. And, I think one of the things that was heartbreaking about Dewey's death was that, in theory, he was supposed to have a happy ending 22 years ago or 21 years ago. And Scream 3 was supposed to be the end. And, you can criticize Scream 3 all you want, but I felt like that final scene at the end of Scream 3, I thought that was a good send-off. I thought it wrapped things up very well. I thought it was a great ending to an overall dark story. It's kind of sad that they, keep tormenting, if you will, these survivors. So I could go either way. I just think that it's kind of getting old. I feel like that Sidney will not die ever. I think, Neve Campbell has said that, she thinks the character's just been through too much that it kind of unravels too many things if you finally kill her off. I do agree. It's a little too lazy for my liking. So you might as well just not include her at this point. I feel like these characters have been too tormented. Work with the new characters. You got 4 new survivors.
The only thing that worries me about not killing them is I feel that somebody somewhere, and not necessarily that these people will, but if we really do keep this going, or maybe even take another 10 years off and we're going to come back again, I feel like if you don't kill them eventually, somebody's going to come up with the idea of going, they are the killer this time. But I don't think you can pull it off.
I just don't think that Neve Campbell or Courtney Cox is desperate enough to agree to play the role if they are going to be the killer. As you said, Courtney Cox got that Friends syndication money. And I think Neve Campbell, she seems like a performer who stands her ground and knows what's best for her character. And I think, there's so much emotion intertwined with Wes Craven that they feel like this would be too much of a betrayal for one of these characters that he put so much work into. I mean, Kevin Williamson created them, but mind you, Wes Craven was the one that kept the screenwriter of Scream 3. Aaron Kruger was the first to admit he didn't really understand these characters like he usually does because he didn't create them. He's a guy that's used to creating his own characters, and he was thrown into a position that's hard to not accept. But these are characters that were already created, so he needed Wes's help to guide him through that. So in a lot of ways, I feel like these are Wes's characters, not just Kevin Williamson's or Neve Campbell or Courtney Cox. I do not feel like they would be returning if some writer decided, I have this solid script. It's as good as The Godfather. But the catch is that Gale Weathers did it. I just do not think that they would agree to come back, no matter how good it is.
I would hope not. It's just my fear is that somebody actually does come up with that. Like I said, if you did it and it worked, it has to be an amazing script, right? Like it has to be an idea that you and I cannot fathom, of being like, holy shit, this is a tremendous idea. You should do this. The other part would worry me is like you have that great idea on paper and everybody goes like, we're in. And then somewhere in the process where you're filming it, it falls apart and it doesn't quite work on screen. And it's just like, oops, well, we took that swing we shouldn't have taken. It seemed good at the time. I don't know. I would like to see a thing of if the new set of movies is like a trilogy, maybe like don't have them in the next one. And then that way you can even kind of tease the idea of like, oh, maybe we haven't seen them in this movie. What wouldn't be crazy if it turned out one of them's the killer? And then you bring them back for 7. Then you bring them back to end that trilogy and be like, okay, we're going to figure out what we're going to do to kind of give these characters either finally a happy ending, or maybe you kill one or both, or you do whatever you do, but maybe take a movie off and see how things go without them. I liked all the survivors in this movie, by the way. I would not walk into the next one being like, I need these other characters or else I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I like all of the survivors as well, but I'm not sure if that's because their characters were excellent or because of, who they're related to, So there was a couple of things that I did want to talk about before we get to the killer reveal. And one of them was the absolute love for Randy in this movie, which I thought I thought they did several homages to him really, really well. And I just love the home theater dedicated to him. I thought that was really cool. But then I thought seeing his nephew and his niece, I was like, oh man, this poor family is going to, one of them could be the killer. One of them could, or both of them could die. But then it was like, the writers, I just don't think the writers could bring themselves to torment that poor family anymore. At
least not yet.
At least not yet. But the fact that the twins both survived, that doesn't say anything about plot armor, but it just another wink at the fans that these filmmakers love Randy also, because Randy was the mouthpiece of those first 2 movies. I felt like anyone who is a movie geek, like they just knew Randy, that Randy was them, and just, so. But the other thing I wanted to mention is I think they got some things wrong about the Stab series in this movie. So they're saying that Stab 8 is the most recent one. So the problem I have with that, which doesn't align with, is that all the Scream movies were turned into Stab movies. And then there were also some additional Stab movies along the way. Now, in the opening of Scream 4, we see Stab 6 and Stab 7. So therefore, Scream 4 is Stab 8. However, in Scream 5, there is no stab 9, yet Sidney is not in stab 8, according to the opening scene. So either they did not turn Scream 4 into a stab movie, which does not align with what the killers say, or they completely messed up the stabs.
Well, I think what they'd be going for is the fact that the basis of stab 8 either would have been, we are not going to cover the events of Scream 4, which would piss off fans, which we'll get more into that in a minute. Or they decided to do some sort of like, okay, we're going to loosely base it around the events of 4, but we're also not going to have the key characters in the positions people think they are. So I would say, I mean, it definitely feels odd that, but of course, again, the Scream franchise took 10 years off, 2 different times, basically. But it does feel kind of odd of like Stab 8 is brand new or newish, at least. But of course, then again, what they're basing it off of, people are still talking about 5 years later. I don't necessarily know if I would consider that like a plot hole or a problem or anything like that, but I would like to hear the writers explain, like, yes, 4 is Stab 8, and that's what the fans were angry about, was that the 2020 story about what happened does not line up with this movie that came out. So you guys went way too far off of what this real material is based off of. So I don't think it necessarily says that it wasn't based off it, but I'd be curious to know what exactly the differences were.
That questions why the killers are relying on the movie's accuracy in order to align with their planned ending. If Scream 8 is so inaccurate to the events of Scream 4, why would 9 be any more realistic? Why would 9 align with their grand scheme? Why would they rely on that so much?
Well, let's kind of break that down, though, this is why because we kind of alluded to it earlier about how like these movies almost entirely rely on the reveal and like the reason for why they're doing stuff, which is a big part as to why 3 for me was like, I liked like 3, I thought was fine, like a thumbs in the middle. Like, this is not a Batman versus Superman situation here. It's more of a Zack Snyder's Justice League situation of like, okay, this was fine. I liked it. It's whatever. But there's so many better movies in this franchise. Why am I watching this one? But the entire reveal to me and the motive I thought was absolutely fantastic. When I realized exactly what they were doing, I cheered in the theater along with like 3 other people that were in there that were also cheering. And when people were leaving, they were all totally like, that was a genius idea. And fuck those type of fanboys. I mean, it's very clear. They thank Rian Johnson in the credits. Stab 8 is The Last Jedi, obviously, and the reaction to The Last Jedi. The idea, though, of like, we're going to fix this, which is, the attitude that a lot of Star Wars fans had or other fans of franchises of like, well, if you listen to the fans. So I do feel that if a franchise was based on a real life thing and you thought they went too far off and everybody online is complaining about it, the studio is then going to think, how do we fix this problem? And how do we, make a movie that everybody likes, which you just can't do. Nobody's always going to like everything. And I guarantee you, if The Empire Strikes Back came out in modern times of YouTube, you would have had 1 million people being like, that's not how Luke's supposed to be. And Darth Vader can't be his father. That's bullshit. So I could see these characters being like, yeah, you know what? We're going to put on such a fucking masterful performance and we're going to make it look like Sydney and Gale and whatever, like they're the ones who fucking snapped and they did it. That is going to be the basis of how they're going to bring this thing back. Like we are setting the stage where it's going to be so good. My YouTube idea of what Star Wars Episode 9 should be is going to be so good. They're going to hire me and we're going to make that episode. We're going to retcon the sequel trilogy and my idea where Luke is pulling Star Destroyers out of the sky. That's what we're going to make. That's what I loved about it, is the fact that they probably thought, we're going to make this and they're going to have no choice but to take our idea. And just like real life with some of these fans, is there's no guarantee that what they're talking about is ever actually going to happen. Like it's no longer release the Snyder Cut. It's now restore the Snyderverse. And these goddamn people really think like, because they got the Snyder Cut finally, that they're going to get Snyder rehired, despite the fact that, Affleck has been like, I will drink myself to death. I cannot do this part anymore. And they're like, okay, cool. We love you, Ben, but we need you to come back for Justice League 2 and 3 and like 5 Batman movies. So it's okay if you die. So the idea of, well, yeah, but it may not even end up as a Stab 9. It's like, yeah, it may not. But I think those characters would believe that their idea is so amazing, they will have no choice. And knowing what we know about how studios are very reactive to like crying fans online, I think there would be a better than 0% chance that they were right, at least in some form, which is what I loved about Gale at the end, when she's all like, no, fuck it, let him die in anonymity. And it was like, oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Fuck those guys.
But I did too. I love that. But at the same time, that line alone makes me think that Stab 8 was not Scream 4.
Yeah.
Or else they would not have carried out their plan, because if Scream 4 was not made into a Stab movie, maybe this one, despite how good it is, there's still that risk there. So it was almost like they were carrying out their plan as it was a guarantee that they would get a Stab movie. And they were planning on orchestrating this type of ending. But worst case scenario, Richie would still be immortalized in a Stab movie. And then, that's what led Gail to her line. So, and maybe that will grow on me a little bit. But again, similar to Scream 4, I feel like the motive is too much of a piggyback on Scream 3's motive, where it was jealousy and upset about how much attention someone gets for a tragedy. Specifically in this universe, it's Stab movies. Whereas I felt like the first and second movies, and even the third movie, when it was originally a trilogy, all three movies kind of had their own unique motive that played into the universe that was created. Whereas Scream 4 and 5 just feel like it's too close to Scream 3. But also I felt like it was a little bit of a petty attack on how toxic some fandom can be. And I appreciate that frustration. But at the same time, I also feel like it's a resistance to the idea that people who are in these movies or part of the studio, they're actually forced to hear fans' reactions, as opposed to just allowing Entertainment Weekly or whomever to plug their movie and then just put on, their earplugs when things are released. I'm not saying that, fans are any less toxic because of that, but I am saying that they are forced to hear their consumers now. This is a very customer service type thing. I hate to say it like that, but you have to be in mind. If no one is going to see your movie, then you don't have a movie, right? I feel like the filmmakers are just stuck at a time where they did not have to hear people's reactions, and so there's a little bit of resistance towards that nowadays. And there's no gatekeeper anymore. Anyone can make content now, and anyone can be successful at it. I mean, just look at these YouTubers or Instagram influencers or whatever. All they have is a phone, and they're making millions now. And I think the studios need to recognize that they're no longer the gatekeepers anymore. Their politics, their money, and their earplugs to what people want. It's kind of bitten them in the ass. And I just feel like Scream 5 was kind of used as a big middle finger towards it's progress.
100% a middle finger to the people who have gone from being, stocking at Walmart to their new career now is a million videos on YouTube about The Last Jedi and how, oh my God, Brie Larson said this thing about, there should be more black critics, Marvel's going too woke, or whatever, or what they call it, the MCU, because, Elizabeth Olsen, is the star on WandaVision. It's not Vision Wanda, it's WandaVision. See, it's getting too woke now, and all this other crap. But the fans have always been able to speak with their wallet. And that's one of the problems that I have with listening to these. Not exactly. Well, because certain things are always going to make their money, and then no matter what, they're kind of foolproof, right? Like,
it's also a pastime. It's also where people go on dates. It's also just how people connect. You want to hang out with a friend, you guys go see a movie. I remember going to see movies that nowadays I would not even. I had no interest back then to see it, but I just saw it because that's what you did back then. So it's different.
But the fans voted with their wallets on that. And I agree with you. It's like, it is nice to know now, though, that a little better of an idea of what the people think. I do. But I think we've crossed the line now to where we are listening to the most toxic and the most, quite frankly, in a lot of cases, stupid people who don't understand plot, don't understand story. All they know is, I want Luke Skywalker to pull 100 Star Destroyers out of the sky. And if he doesn't do that, he's not Luke Skywalker. And it's like, yeah, that's what you played with your toys as a child, but that was never the point of those movies.
I know what you mean. I follow. And I agree. Just the toxicness of just this obsessive fandom. I wouldn't even call them fans. I feel like fans, are healthy people.
it's their lives. It's their entire lives.
Yeah. But I don't believe that the wallet is a good way to gauge things, because if you hate a movie, you're still paying to see it. So the studio still makes money whether or not it's liked or disliked. So, the fact that the fans actually have a platform to voice their concerns is, it's something that we need to make sure we don't get too carried away with, but it's something that Hollywood is less of a gatekeeper now. And I think that's great. I think that allows for more creativity, more ideas thrown around by people who didn't grow up in LA. Nothing against anyone who did grow up in LA, but you understand most of our movies, even ones that we love to death, they all take place in LA. They're all about, and so we are broadening our horizons as a result of this, as a result of Hollywood in some ways or another going down. Yeah, people are paying for a movie and they can hate it, but the studio still makes the money. All they do is say, oh, okay, well, we made all this money, but there's a lot of 1-star reviews out there. So let's go ahead and we'll make more money again if we just repurpose it and cast someone else as a new Spider-Man in a new reboot and all of that.
Yes, they can still make their money, but where these things make their real money is repeat viewings. And I think where they really, really make their money is not just repeat viewings, but people like you and me who we love Batman, right? Like your wife's going to see Batman just because she's your wife. Like even if she doesn't like Batman, she's going to go because it's like, this is one she can't skip out on.
Well, I think between you, me, and my wife, she's the only one that actually saw Batman 89 in theater.
Wow. I may have, but I don't have any.
I definitely did not. I saw Batman Returns.
I saw Returns.
Yes, I did see Returns in theaters as well.
I do think people have always had their voice. And, of course, there are bad movies that make a fuck ton of money, and there are great movies that make no money. But what Scream 5 is doing, though, it's not attacking just fans who are online, and because there are fan stuff that I watch and I go, this guy has good takes, or whatever. They are specifically, with the second they said it was made by the Knives Out guy, I knew instantly. It wasn't a secret at that point as to what we're talking about here. And a lot of people, I think, probably put Ghostbusters, the Kirsten Wiig one, where it kind of went too far from fans having a voice to being like, oh, this is just kind of alt-right type shit at this point. This is getting a little crazy. And that's what a lot of it is. It's culture war stuff. So I don't think anybody's taking any stab at somebody, no pun intended, at somebody who might do their YouTube video and go well, I saw The Rise of Skywalker and it's, I guess, 2 out of 5 stars. It's fine. I like this part about it, but it let me down. Versus the people who are still making their entire personality around how much they hate The Last Jedi, for example. And that's actually one of the things I alluded to earlier that was sort of a red herring. And then in hindsight, I could see somebody looking at it as a plot hole. But if you understand this type of fan base, I think it's genius and one of my favorite moments in the entire Scream franchise, quite frankly. When Jack Quaid. Yeah,
so Richie.
When he is off by himself, there's nobody around. He does not have to put on the oh, I'm a fan learning, right? I'm learning about this thing, right? He's sitting in a hotel with a pizza and he's watching angry YouTubers who are going lazy writing, woke SJW politics or whatever, right? And if you think about it, you don't know the stuff. You're going well, why is he doing his research about something that he knows everything about? When there's nobody watching to make, for him to be see, I'm learning. What I love about that, though, in hindsight, knowing that he's one of the killers and he's sitting there watching this stuff and he's telling her on the phone that he's doing research. But the reality is he ain't doing research. He's just in his little echo chamber that he loves. There's a possibility that was a brand new video that just came out. It's oh, this is the 80th video this YouTuber has made about Stab 8. I'm going to watch it as a fan. This is his entertainment. Or it could be it's the same bad, review for Stab 8 that he's watched a million times. But the fact of his form of entertainment is sitting there being told what he wants to hear about something he doesn't like, I thought was a fantastic kind of red herring of well, he's doing his research on this. If the motivation is we're pissed off fans, he can't be the killer because he's not a fan. And then when you go but wait, he's doing research, but he already knows about this stuff. It's no, he's not doing research. This is his entertainment.
Right. That was brilliant. In fact, that adds a whole creepiness element to it when you see it like that. And there's no denying that there's a lot of brilliance in this newest movie. And yeah, that's an excellent example. And I know, just I'm a big defender of Scream 3 now, but again, I had 20 years to kind of reflect on it. So I imagine that as time goes on, I'm going to love Scream 5 more and more, not less and less. One thing I did want to I think we should wrap this up. But one thing I did want to say, Skeet Ulrich is brilliant.
Thank you for bringing him back up, because I was going to bring him up at one point and I didn't get a chance to. So yes.
I always feel like trailers give stuff away. So I did watch that one trailer that dropped in November, but I avoided all subsequent trailers. I avoided any Wikipedia articles about Scream 5, all of that. I had no idea Skeet Ulrich was going to reprise his character as Billy Lewis. I was just so surprised. I was so impressed with how they did it. Even though Billy Loomis himself is not probably that great of a character, when you have characters like Stu Macher and Randy Meeks, Gale Weathers, even Tatum Riley, but the way Skeet Ulrich portrays him, and
it's fantastic. He's fantastic.
He's so underrated.
Yeah, I got super excited when I saw him. I thought it was absolutely fantastic the way they handled it. And like you were saying before about how like going back and reshaping stuff that doesn't damage the way you view those movies, of giving him a daughter that, you know, he didn't live to find out. Maybe they never even found out the girl was pregnant at that point. And yeah, I thought that was all really well done. It doesn't reshape anything. So if it had bombed, you aren't going to rewatch the first one being like, oh, he's about to be a dad. Now I'm rethinking this whole thing. It was all perfectly handled.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yes. So the finale, let's go with that. And, you know, we've already covered the motive. And like I said, I think the motive is one of the better ones in the entire franchise, knowing how shitty these type of fans are. But there was a part of the movie, and I never tend to take my phone out during a movie or anything like that, but it was a pretty empty screening. Like, it was the first 7 p.m. Thursday night. You know, it wasn't dead, but there was maybe 50 people in like a 200 and some seat auditorium. I'm sitting in the back corner and I'm watching it. I'm enjoying it. And there's like a little down moment. And I just pull my phone up and I text my friend and I go, yeah, this is one of the Manson girls from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm like, so there is no way she is not one of the killers.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Because this is another thing I'd be very curious to see what the idea here was. But do you think that they cast her and then decided we're going to light her on fire? Or do you think that was a happy accident? I literally, in the theater, when she got lit on fire, I shouted out, Rick fucking Dalton. And the entire place started laughing and applauding.
I don't know, but it just speaks to how predictable it was. The fact that there's just so many parallels between that. If it was an accident, I wouldn't call it a happy accident. But in a murder mystery, when I'm supposed to try and guess and they're supposed to try and stump the audience, that takes the fun out of it. You make the most obvious person who's already proven themselves to play an excellent psychopath, the psychopath. I thought it was a poor choice. I thought it would have been better if they cast someone else. She does play a great psychopath. It was just too obvious for me.
If Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was just like a movie that I really liked, or even just like a movie I saw and barely remembered, I may have been like, okay, this is too like on the nose or whatever. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of my all-time favorite movies, like period. So to me, it was like, I love it so much that any sort of reference, even one that was so on the nose, just filled me with so much joy. I personally loved it and thought it was a genius callback. And if it wasn't a callback, something very weird is going on there.
I'd like to share your positivity, but I'm far less enthusiastic about that. I just feel like it was just a poor creative choice, especially in a murder mystery.
Yeah. I thought the kind of poorer choice was the boyfriend. But then again, I also...
the boyfriend and also the homeowner.
But I also kind of forgave the boyfriend thing even too when like Dewey calls it out immediately. Like, how long has he been your boyfriend? How well do you really know him? Then with all that, he even says like, Jesus Christ, how stupid are you? Like, of course it's the boyfriend. He told you it was a boyfriend. You are so fucking dumb. And at that point, I kind of go like, you know what? That line alone is going to kind of wave away like the concerns I have of like, oh, that was obvious. And I thought they did a good enough job of masking that it would be him when he was by himself watching that stuff. Because my brain didn't go to like, this is his entire life. Of course he's watching. I'm going like, no, he really doesn't know what's going on. Let's wrap it up then with...
I think that's a good place.
Have you made a ranking system in your head yet? Let's do that. So, so you go first.
All right, from worst to best. I'm actually going to make it relatively easy. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
You have 5 at the very bottom.
On first viewing, but I do feel like these movies, as much as I enjoy them and as much as I love them more and more with age, I feel like each movie does progressively get lower quality. There's more of a suspension of disbelief required with each subsequent film and all of that. So
okay, I can see that. I think, but so with me, I'm gonna go from worst to best. 3, 4, 2, 5, 1. I really loved this movie. If it had come out 3 weeks earlier, I probably would have put it at like the bottom of my top 10 of the year, because I thought like the 2021 movies there was some great stuff and a lot of stuff that really let me down. Outside of like West Side Story and like Licorice Pizza, like there was not much where I was like, this was like a 5-star movie. And I think it could have honestly slipped into like the number 10 spot of like my 10 favorite movies of the year. And I would be curious to see what you think when you rewatch it, because I really liked it on first viewing. And then on second viewing, I'm going like, this is all working out pretty goddamn well. For a movie that I was excited for, but I was also going, it could be bad. Right now, and when I say 5 over 2, it's not like 5 is 10 out of 10 and 2 is 9 out of 10. It's more of like I could flip a coin, and I really love 2. We both agree 1 is obviously probably never going to get topped.
It's a masterpiece.
It really is. 3, 4, 2, 5, 1.
Okay. You said it well with Scream 3, that you still think it's a good movie, and I still think Scream 5 is a good movie, but I think 4 and 5 in particular are always going to be at a disadvantage, because even though Scream 3 kind of went out with a whimper in comparison to Scream 1 and Scream 2, I felt like the story was completed. It was the characters' stories arced very, very well. All subsequent installments are in some form or another cash grabs, even though they're entertaining. And I admit that no movie is made without the intention of making money. But even still, they're opening up a door that should have stayed closed forever. I don't care how good the script is.
I would even go a step further and say that you could very easily have just done 1 and 2.
Yeah, there are no hints about Scream 3 and Scream 1, but there's several hints about Scream 2 and Scream 1. At the same time, with the introduction of Stab in Scream 2, I feel like they opened a whole new door that could not be covered in one movie. I feel like 3 movies for what Scream 1 was. Scream 1 was a masterpiece. I feel like it had enough substance that 1 sequel probably wouldn't have been enough, but 2 sequels probably would have been perfect. I kind of wish this stayed as a trilogy, but even still, I have a fun time watching Scream 4. I like to revisit it. It gets funner every time I watch it, and I have no doubt that I'll have the same feelings with Scream 5.